A plane takes off from New York City, bound for Miami, 57 passengers, a full flight crew. Everything seems normal, until somewhere over the Atlantic, it vanishes. No distress calls, no wreckage, no explanation. For 37 years, the families of the passengers mourned their loved ones, believing they had been lost forever. But then, on a seemingly ordinary day in 1992, an unknown aircraft appeared on radar screens over Caracas, Venezuela. The plane looked old, outdated. Its radio frequency was broadcasting a call sign that no longer existed. When air traffic control demanded an identification, the pilot responded, "This is Pan Am Flight 914, scheduled from New York to Miami." What's going on? The controllers froze. That flight had been missing for nearly 4 decades, and yet there it was, descending toward the runway, a plane that should not exist. And when the doors finally opened, the impossible became reality. September 9th, 1992. The control tower at the Simon Bolivar International Airport in Caracas was operating a routine morning shift. At 11:23 a.m., a radar technician noticed something strange. A blip appeared on the screen, moving toward the airport. But something was off. The plane wasn't on any scheduled flight plan. It wasn't broadcasting a modern transponder signal. And when they checked the aircraft ID, it didn't exist in any records. That's when the radio crackled to life. A male voice, anxious, confused, spoke. "This is Pan Am Flight 914, scheduled from New York to Miami. What is happening?" The control tower fell silent. Pan Am Flight 914 had been declared missing in 1955. It was impossible. But as the air traffic controllers looked out toward the runway, their disbelief turned into shock. A 1950 S-era Pan American World Airways jet was descending. The same Pan Am logo, though faded with time. The same aircraft design that had been retired decades ago. The same tail number as the missing flight from 1955. Everything about it was exactly as it had been on the day it disappeared. But how? Had it been hiding somewhere for 37 years? Or had it never been gone at all? As the plane touched down, airport security rushed toward the aircraft. They expected a hoax, a prank, a mistake, but as they got closer, something felt wrong. Through the windows, the passengers looked terrified, as if they had just experienced something horrifying. Then the cabin door slowly opened. The pilot stepped out first. His uniform was perfectly preserved, the same design Pan Am had used in the 1950s. His hair was slicked back in the style of the era. His face was pale, his eyes scanning the airport in pure confusion. And then he asked, "Where are we?" The flight attendants stood behind him, still clutching their Pan Am-issued clipboards and passenger logs. The passengers followed, looking bewildered, as if they had just stepped into a different world. Families with young children, businessmen in 1950s suits and hats, elderly couples clutching worn-out luggage. But then the control tower asked something that sent a wave of fear through the crew. "What was your scheduled arrival date?" The pilot's answer, July 2nd, 1955. By now, airport officials were in a panic. The passengers looked exactly the same as they did on the day they left New York. They had not aged a single day. Their clothes, their luggage, even their newspapers were all from 1955, untouched by time. A doctor was called in to examine the passengers. Their medical records were identical to those from 1955. They had no signs of malnutrition, no evidence of being lost or stranded. Their bodies showed no cellular aging, as if they had truly only been flying for a few hours. To them, only a few hours had passed. They had no idea they had landed in 1992. Then, something even stranger happened. The pilot, suddenly overcome with fear, pushed everyone back. "We have to leave! We were never supposed to be here!" Before authorities could react, he rushed back into the cockpit, yelling to the flight crew. The passengers scrambled back inside, looking horrified. And before airport security could intervene, the engines roared back to life. Ground control screamed over the radio, "Pan Am 914, stand down!" But it was too late. The aircraft accelerated down the runway, ignoring orders to stop, and lifted off into the sky. Airport officials scrambled to track it, but then, just like before, it vanished again. What followed was one of the most intense aviation investigations in history. The Venezuelan airport searched every record. Pan Am 914 never existed in modern flight logs. The airline itself had shut down in 1991, a year before this happened. No satellite or military radar could detect the plane after it vanished. Investigators contacted the families of the passengers who had disappeared in 1955. They showed them photos of the people who landed in Caracas. The families confirmed it. These were their relatives. They had not aged. It was impossible. And then authorities found one last disturbing detail. An airport maintenance worker who had been at the scene that day found something unusual. A small, crumpled piece of paper was found near the runway, a boarding pass from Pan Am 914, stamped July 2nd, 1955, but at the bottom, someone had scrawled a message in faded ink, 3 words, "It's not over." To this day, no one knows what happened to Flight 914. Some believe it was a time slip, a rift in reality where the plane entered one timeline and exited another. Others claim the passengers were trapped in an alternate dimension, one they briefly escaped before being pulled back. But one theory is the most terrifying of all. What if the plane is still out there? What if it will return in another 37 years? That would mean its next arrival should be in 2029. And if it does, will the passengers finally be free, or will they disappear forever?